Okay, so let's talk about one of the biggest mysteries in the Old Testament. There's this figure who shows up again and again. He sounds like God, he acts like God, but the text just calls him an angel. So what in the world is going on here? We're going to dive in and try to figure it out.
And right away, here's the heart of the puzzle we're trying to solve. Why would an angel in the Old Testament speak like he is God, accept worship, and even forgive sins? I mean, this is not your run-of-the-mill messenger angel. This guy is doing things that, according to the Bible's own rules, only God is supposed to do. Answering this question is really the key to unlocking the whole thing.
So, yeah, we're kicking off our investigation with this central paradox. It's like the text is telling us two completely different things at the exact same time. On one hand, it says angel. On the other, the description sounds an awful lot like God. So how can both of those things possibly be true?
Okay, look at this. This really lays out the problem perfectly. Think about a regular angel, right? Someone like Gabriel. He shows up and delivers a message from God. He'll say something like, "Thus says the Lord." And if anyone tries to worship him, he's like, "No way, get up, I'm just a servant." But this guy, the angel of the Lord, it's a totally different story. He speaks as God, using I and me. He accepts worship, and he even has the authority to forgive sins. That's a massive contradiction, and for us, it's a huge clue.
So how in the world do we solve this? Well, we have to put on our detective hats, because the cool thing is, the answers aren't buried in some ancient, dusty commentary. They're actually hiding in plain sight, right there in the biblical text itself. You just have to know where to look. So let's open up our first case file and start following the evidence.
All right, case file number 1. This comes from one of the most famous stories in the entire Bible, Moses at the burning bush. You know the one. This is the moment Moses gets his big calling to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. But the key here is to pay super close attention to who is actually speaking.
So the scene is set. The text seems really clear, right? It says, "The angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire." So the figure in the bush is the angel of the Lord. Seems pretty straightforward, but just wait. Watch what happens only 2 verses later. And boom, here's where it gets really interesting. The angel we just read about in verse 2 is now called the Lord and God in verse 4. The text just switches the names. It uses them completely interchangeably with zero explanation. So wait a minute, who is in the bush? Is it the angel or is it God? The text seems to be saying yes, both. Okay, was that just a one-time thing? Let's see if this pattern shows up anywhere else. We're going to jump forward in time a bit to our second case file, the story of Gideon. Now, Gideon's just a regular guy, a farmer, literally hiding from his enemies, when he gets a very unexpected visitor. And here we go again. The encounter starts with the angel of the Lord. And the angel gives him this message of encouragement, saying, "The Lord is with you." See that? He's talking about the Lord in the third person. But just like what we saw with Moses, the speaker is about to do a quick change. Whoa, look at that switch. All of a sudden, it's not the angel talking about the Lord anymore. Now it's the Lord himself speaking, and he says, "Do not I send you?" in the first person. So the person Gideon is talking to is the one sending him. The pattern is definitely holding. All right, let's look at one more. Our final case file is all about the parents of Samson. You know, the super strong guy, Manoah and his wife. An angel shows up to tell them they're going to have this miracle son. But this particular encounter, it's got a few extra details that are, well, they're very telling. So Manoah asks the angel for his name, and the response he gets is fascinating. The angel doesn't say, "I'm Gabriel," or "I'm Michael." Instead, he says, "Why do you ask my name?" seeing it is wonderful. Now that word wonderful isn't just a random adjective. It's actually a divine title that's used for God in other parts of the Old Testament, like in Isaiah 9:6 when it's describing the Messiah. So this angel is basically claiming a divine nature for himself. And check this out. This is the conclusion from the eyewitness himself. After the angel disappears up into a flame, Manoah doesn't turn to his wife and say, "Wow, that was a really powerful angel." Nope. His immediate reaction is pure terror and awe. Why? Because he is absolutely convinced that he has just seen God face to face. Okay, let's just step back and put all the evidence together. In every single case we looked at, this figure speaks as God. He accepts offerings and worship that normal angels would refuse, and he's identified as God either by the narrator or by the people right there in the story. You can't deny the pattern. This is clearly no ordinary messenger. So we've looked at the evidence, and it is all pointing in one very specific direction. This whole phenomenon, God showing up in a visible physical form, it actually has a name. It's a theological term, and it's pretty much the solution to our whole mystery.
and that word is theophany. It's a mashup of two Greek words that basically mean God and to appear. It's the fancy, technical term for a visible appearance of God to people. So what Moses, Gideon, and Manoah saw wasn't just a messenger from God, it was a manifestation of God.
Okay, so let's just lay the conclusion out on the table. Now, some scholars might say, well, maybe it's just a really powerful angel speaking with God's authority. But the evidence we've just walked through, speaking as God, accepting worship, being identified as God, it really points to something much bigger. For a lot of Christian thinkers and theologians, the puzzle is solved by identifying the angel of the Lord as a pre-incarnate appearance of the Son of God, Jesus Christ, himself, appearing on earth long before his birth in Bethlehem.
At this point, you might be thinking, okay, that's a cool theological puzzle, but so what? Why does this actually matter? Well, it matters a lot. This interpretation has absolutely massive implications for how we understand and read the entire Bible.
Yeah, this isn't just a piece of trivia. If this idea is right, it means Jesus didn't just suddenly appear in the New Testament out of nowhere. It means the Son of God was here all along. He was actively present, engaging with his people, guiding them, revealing himself all the way through the Old Testament narrative. It basically stitches the Old and New Testaments together into one single, continuous story of God's relationship with humanity.
And really, that's the key takeaway here. This isn't about someone in the 21st century trying to force an idea back onto an ancient text. The challenge, really, is to just read the words on the page carefully. The text itself is what creates this puzzle, and the text itself provides the clues. This whole theory of a theophany, of a pre-incarnate Christ, it comes directly from people trying to make sense of what the Old Testament authors actually wrote down. So let's end with this thought to chew on. If a figure as central and significant as the Son of God could be present all through the Old Testament, kind of veiled under this title, the angel of the Lord, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What else might we be missing? What other incredible connections and deep meanings are just hiding there in plain sight, waiting for us to find them?